I remember the sound before the silence, the storm of metal, the hum of drones cutting through the dark, the clash that used to define who we were. Then everything stopped. Smoke rose into a sky painted with ash, and in that stillness I realized strength is not the roar, it's what remains when the roar dies. They called me the Iron Guardian, but iron was never my armor. It was what I had to become. When I first stepped onto the field, I believed courage was loud. I shouted orders, I demanded obedience, I wanted the world to hear my power. Yet the world never listens to noise, it listens to results. After the third campaign, I stopped shouting. I learned that silence can command far more than words. In silence, men see certainty. In silence, fear hears its own echo and retreats. I was 24 when I realized that every soldier carries two wars, the one outside and the one inside. The outer war demands bullets. The inner war demands belief. The outer war ends when the enemy falls. The inner war never ends. It lives in the choices we make when no one watches. That's the real battlefield, and that's where most of us lose before the first shot is fired. People think discipline is born in boot camps. It isn't. Discipline is forged every time you choose to rise when your body screams no. Every dawn I woke before the sirens, not because I had to, but because I needed to prove to myself that I could. That's where strength begins, in small victories, invisible to the world. One more push-up, one more mile, one more breath held longer than yesterday. Those are the quiet wars that build unbreakable men. There were days when fear walked beside me like a shadow. The closer I got to danger, the larger it grew. I used to fight it to deny it. But fear isn't the enemy. It's the signal. It tells you where the edge is, and only at the edge do you find growth. I learned to listen to fear, to breathe it in, to let it sharpen me. When I stopped running from fear, I started chasing purpose. They say heroes are born from glory, but I've seen the truth. Heroes are born from failure. The medals they give us are carved from the lessons of defeat. Every mission that broke me down built a new part of me. I failed more times than I succeeded, but each failure was a teacher that spoke only one language: pain. Pain is the instructor that never lies. It strips away excuses until all that's left is raw potential waiting to be shaped. Once, during a long night operation, I was separated from my unit. The comms were down, the coordinates lost, the storm overhead roaring like a living thing. I was alone for 42 hours. Hunger, cold, and doubt became my only companions. I thought of quitting, of sending a distress signal, but then I heard my own breathing. It was steady. It was alive. That single sound reminded me, if you can still breathe, you can still fight. I took one step, then another, and somewhere between the 23rd and the 1,000th fear broke before I did. People think strength is built in the gym, but true strength is built in solitude. When there's no applause, no witness, no reward, only you and the voice inside daring you to stop. That's where transformation begins. Every man meets a moment when the world grows silent, when even hope seems far away. In that silence, you discover who you are. Not the uniform, not the title, the will beneath it all. I kept a journal during those years, not of battles, but of thoughts. One line I wrote over and over: endure quietly, rise loudly. It became my creed. Every time life tried to bury me, I remembered that steel is tempered only by fire. The more intense the flame, the purer the metal. So when life burns you, don't curse the heat. Thank it. Thank it. It's sculpting you into something the cold could never create. They called me a soldier, but I was becoming something else. A guardian, not of territory, but of principles. Honor, integrity, resilience. These were my weapons. And the heaviest of them was responsibility. To guard others, you must first conquer yourself. You cannot lead if you are still at war with your own doubts. I learned to silence the chaos inside before I could silence the chaos around me. When the younger soldiers asked how to stay strong, I told them strength isn't about muscles or medals, it's about endurance of spirit. Can you stay kind when the world turns cruel? Can you stay calm when everything burns? Can you keep walking when every step hurts? That's real power. Muscles tire, but conviction doesn't. Even now, I remember the night the fortress fell. The alarms blared, the sky lit with fire, and every instinct screamed to run. Instead, I walked. Step by step through the smoke toward the collapsing gates. Not because I wanted to die, but because someone had to stand. Sometimes courage is simply refusing to move backward. I didn't feel brave. I felt necessary. When dawn broke, the battlefield was quiet. The air was thick with the scent of iron and dust. I stood there exhausted, surrounded by ruin, and yet I felt peace. Because I had done what I was meant to do. That's when I understood. Victory isn't about what you gain, it's about what you refuse to lose. I refuse to lose my will. Years later, I still wake to silence. The world moves fast, chasing noise, but I find strength in stillness. I train, I breathe, I listen to the heartbeat of life pulsing under everything. The Iron Guardian isn't a man, it's a mindset. It's the ability to face chaos without letting it shape you. The battlefields have changed now. The weapons are digital, the wars are mental, but the principles remain. Every one of us fights fatigue, distraction, doubt. Every day is another chance to choose discipline over comfort, growth over ease, meaning over convenience. That's the modern war, and you were the soldier. Weeks turned into years, and the silence I once feared became the only companion I trusted. I no longer chased the noise of recognition. I chased the sound of my own breath. Every sunrise, I'd walk the perimeter alone. The earth under my boots reminded me that nothing stands forever. Not fortresses, not flags, not even the men who swear to defend them. Everything falls. What matters is how you stand when it does. One winter morning, command sent a message. A unit had gone dark beyond the eastern ridge. New recruits, barely trained. The storms there could erase whole convoys. I volunteered before they even asked. They said I was past my prime, that the younger ones could handle it. I smiled. Strength isn't in youth, it's in endurance. We set out at dusk. Ice cut our faces, visibility dropped to meters. The calms crackled and died. I could feel their fear through the static. Every man's breath grew shallow, rhythm broken by doubt. I told them to stop shouting orders. I told them to listen. In the howling wind, there was a pattern, a rhythm between gusts. Brief seconds of calm. I moved in those seconds, signaling them wordlessly. Step, pause, wait for the wind. Step again. The storm tried to scatter us, but silence kept us together. When we reached the valley, we found the lost convoy. Vehicles overturned, one of the soldiers trapped under steel. The others stood paralyzed. I knelt beside the wreck, pressed my hand to the man's shoulder. He whispered, "It's too heavy." I said, "Then we'll become heavier. Then we'll become heavy." We lifted until our arms shook, until the steel moaned, until the man crawled free. It wasn't muscle that saved him, it was will. That night, by the fires we built from broken crates, I looked at their faces. Boys turned into men in a single day. They thanked me, but I shook my head. "Oh, don't thank me," I said. "Thank the silence. It taught you to listen to what truly matters." I began to understand then that the battlefield is a mirror. It reflects exactly what you bring to it. Bring fear, it multiplies. Bring calm, it bends. The world doesn't shape you. You shape what the world becomes around you. Months later, when the conflict finally ended, I was ordered home. Medals waited, speeches, applause. But applause is a strange kind of emptiness. It fills the air and leaves the soul hollow. I left before the ceremony, boarded a freight ship bound for the coast. I needed distance from noise. I spent a year by the sea. The waves became my drill sergeant. Constant, patient, relentless. Every crash reminded me that persistence beats power. Rocks that no bomb could move were carved smooth by nothing more than repetition. I trained every dawn on that shoreline, running in sand, lifting driftwood, breathing with the tide. The locals called me the man of iron who never spoke. They didn't understand that silence wasn't a vow, it was freedom. One morning, a child approached me with a broken toy sword, rusted and bent. He asked if I could fix it. I straightened the blade and said, "It's not the sword that matters, it's the hand that holds it." His smile felt like sunlight breaking through years of storm. I realized then that my war had changed shape. I wasn't here to fight enemies anymore. I was here to build warriors. Word spread, and more people came: farmers, fishermen, wanderers. They wanted to learn endurance, not combat. So I taught them how to wake before dawn, how to breathe through struggle, how to face failure with open eyes. Each lesson I gave took another piece of the soldier I used to be and turned it into something quieter, stronger. Still, there were nights when ghosts visited. Faces of those I couldn't save, voices of men lost in the fog. I didn't push them away. I listened. Every loss had left me a message I'd ignored in the noise of duty. Now I heard it, that no strength is ever wasted, even in defeat. The effort itself becomes a light for someone else to follow. When command finally found me again, they asked if I'd return to lead a new generation. I told them I already was. Leadership isn't about rank, it's about presence. If you can stand firm when others shake, you're already leading. And so I stayed. The sea became my barracks, the horizon my parade ground. The Iron Guardian wasn't a uniform anymore. It was the discipline to live with purpose even when no one was watching. Years passed. My hair turned silver, my steps slower, but my resolve sharper. The world had changed. Machines replaced soldiers, drones replaced courage. People began fighting invisible wars inside screens, losing to fatigue, distraction, doubt. I saw the same enemy in a new uniform. So I started writing again, posting words under a name that once belonged to a soldier: silent strength. Those words spread farther than any bullet ever could. I received messages from strangers across continents. Students, workers, dreamers, they all said the same thing. I feel lost. And I wrote back every time. Then you are exactly where strength begins. One stormy evening, a knock came at my door. When I opened it, a young officer stood there, uniform-soaked, eyes bright. He saluted and said, "You saved my life years ago in the valley." I recognized the voice, the recruit I had pulled from fear. He handed me a small box. Inside was my old insignia, cleaned and shining. "It belongs to you," he said. I shook my head. "It belongs to everyone who learned to stand when they wanted to fall." We sat through the night talking about what wars teach and what peace forgets. Before dawn, he left, and I placed the insignia beside the rusted armor hanging on my wall. The metal caught the first light of morning and glowed like fire reborn. That's when I finally understood the truth I'd chased all my life. Strength isn't about never breaking. It's about becoming something unbreakable, because you did. The armor was never meant to keep the world out. It was meant to keep the purpose in. The mornings grew quieter as the seasons turned. The sea that once roared against the cliffs now spoke in slow breaths, as if it too had grown older with me. Every wave carried fragments of memory, the echoes of battle, the laughter of comrades, the hum of machinery that once defined my world. I had spent half a lifetime trying to outrun the past, and another half learning to live beside it. One evening, I walked down to the water with my journal. The pages were almost full, lines of thoughts, reminders, lessons carved from pain and time. I wrote one last entry: "A man becomes iron when he stops fearing the fire." Then I closed it and felt peace settle over me like dusk. Not long after, the storms returned. Not the kind that bring bullets or orders, but floods that tore through the coast. Villages I had helped rebuild were drowning. People came running, shouting my name. There was no hesitation left in me. The old reflexes woke as if they had only been asleep. I fastened what remained of my armor, the metal stiff with rust, and walked into the rain. The water rose fast, black and cold. Houses collapsed like paper. I moved from one to the next, pulling children from windows, cutting ropes, lifting beams. My muscles trembled, lungs burned, but every breath reminded me that life itself was the mission. The villagers shouted to rest, but I couldn't. Not while others needed strength. That night, the storm broke, and with it, something inside me eased. I realized that all the years of fighting had been training for this, not for war, but for service. When the dawn came, the horizon glowed gold against the wreckage. I stood there soaked, armor dripping, watching the sun climb out of the sea. People gathered around me. No one spoke. They didn't need to. Silence said everything. Gratitude, respect, understanding. For the first time in years, I smiled openly. After that day, I stopped wearing the armor. It hung on a wooden post outside my home, rusted but upright. The children called it the sleeping giant. Sometimes they'd place flowers around it, not knowing what it once meant. I never corrected them. Let it stand as a monument, not to war, but to endurance. Years later, I felt my body slowing. The world had changed again. Machines faster, skies cleaner, peace more common. But struggle never disappears. It just changes its face. I saw people fighting smaller wars now. Anxiety, exhaustion, the fear of being unseen. I recognized those battles instantly. They were no different from the ones I fought on the inside decades ago. So I began to write again. Shorter messages this time. Little sparks of hope sent into the digital noise. One message spread more than the rest. It read, "The strongest armor is made of quiet persistence." It circled the world under the name Silent Strength. People quoted it, painted it on walls, tattooed it on skin. They didn't know who wrote it, and that was the point. The Guardian was never meant to be a man. It was meant to be a mirror, a reminder that every person carries a fortress within them. As the years folded into one another, I grew old by the sea. My hands shook when I wrote, but my voice stayed steady. The recruit I'd once saved returned often. He brought news of the world, stories of those my words had reached. One night, he placed a new journal on the table. But for your next campaign, he said with a smile. I opened it and saw the first page already written in his handwriting. Be still until you are ready to move. When you move, move like iron. I laughed, the sound rough with age, but full of life. The torch had already passed. That's what leadership really means. To build others until they no longer need your strength to stand. As the last winter approached, I would sit on the beach wrapped in an old coat, watching the sun set behind the waves. Each sunset looked the same as the first mission I ever took. The same colors, the same rhythm of light fading into dark. And every time I thought, so this is how a warrior rests. One evening, as the tide reached my boots, I whispered to the wind, the mission is complete. I wasn't saying goodbye. I was giving thanks to the battles that forged me, to the silence that healed me, to the world that kept teaching me. When people later spoke of the Iron Guardian, they said he disappeared into the horizon one morning, walking into the light. Maybe that's true. Maybe I'm still walking. Because the truth is, the Guardian lives anywhere a person chooses discipline over doubt, service over self, silence over noise. And if you ever find yourself standing at the edge of your own storm, remember this. You are not weak because you're afraid. You're only weak when you stop moving. Strength isn't the roar of victory. It's the whisper that says, one more step. So take that step. Take it for the ones who couldn't, for the ones who couldn't, for the ones who doubted, for the version of yourself that once thought it was over. The world doesn't need another hero in armor. It needs you, unbreakable in spirit, calm in chaos, steady in purpose. That's all I ever tried to be. Not a legend, not a myth, just proof that silence can be louder than war. If my story reaches you, let it remind you that the iron was never in the armory. It was always in the heart.